everyone, welcome to episode 51 of Formidable Opponents, a show that pits three people who have known each other virtually their entire lives in a series of conversations as we argue what is best in a variety of fun, engaging in critical pop culture topics we all debate about. I'm Randall, and with me as always, Bob and Joseph, and today's topic is Best 80s Movie Montage. The 80s, where music videos were everywhere. Not only was there an entire channel dedicated to these fun and informative videotape performances set to music, but in the 80s, they were ubiquitous. Commercials, television, sports teams, and yes, of course, movies used these clever plot devices to bridge the gap and briskly walk the audience towards an expedited transformation. Let's be honest. These montages were saving graces. They cut the film time and cut to the point. With a single 2-minute snippet, our downtrodden lead quickly starts to take his or her final form as the movie hero. Synthesizers, lightning guitar riffs, and over-the-top inspiring vocals, usually provided by a male singer who looks like a cross between your elementary school female PE coach and your last unmarried aunt. Let's forget about logic and reasoning. Let's forget that these scenes are essentially bullshit and comical in hindsight. Blasphemy. If you can become a karate master, transform into an attractive person, come up with a plan to foil the villain, and discover your over-empowering masculinity by the time Kenny Loggins can get to the third verse, you, my friend, are part of nostalgic lore. You are part of the most cherished childhood memories. You are part of this important discussion. For this week, Formidable Opponents is going to put one foot in front of the other, put the other foot down.
Why?
Yes. This week we debate which is the all-time best 80s movie montage. Bob and Joseph, how are you Tri-Lambs doing?
Always look eye.
Doing good. How's everybody doing today? It's good to be back.
Good to be back. It's nice. I had a nice little 80s weekend of movies and montage. It was great.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get right to it, guys. What are the elements that make for a good 80s movie montage? And what's on your checklist?
It's got to have funny or captivating scenes or images, a great fucking song. And if you can get both of those together, you got a winner. I think it's pretty simple and basic. I mean, you just need those two things.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. It's got to have that great or at least good 80s music, yes. Something funny or overly dramatic that, overlaid in it or that's displayed in it. And it's got to involve some kind of dancing or some kind of training, which we saw to ad nauseum in throughout the 80s montage.
Why were they all like that?
They're like, how can we show this guy doing push-ups in an interesting way? I know, let's add some fucking 80s music over the top of it.
Definitely. The campy music, you got to have it. Things have to be awkward at the start. I think with the movie montages, it's got to show a transformation, as I mentioned at the start of the podcast. There's got to be a reason and a logic as to why are they doing this and why is it put together in 3 or 4 minutes. I mean, it's just a fun, expedited process. Why did we eventually move on from the traditional movie montage?
I don't know, man. I think that's a great question. I guess like most popular things, everything eventually dies out. Hopefully, since there's this kind of rebirth of the 80s and nostalgia coming around with Stranger Things and a lot of these movies and TV shows coming out, maybe it'll make a little comeback. I know Cobra Kai's back, and Cobra Kai is super popular on Netflix, and they've kind of brought back the montage a little bit. So hopefully that's like the spark that kind of brings it back to the movies. I'd love to see some more of that.
Like Bob said, I mean, who knows? Maybe music licensing got too expensive. Maybe studios thought, enough with wasting 4 to 5 minutes of junk footage. Maybe it just got too cheesy. Also, we went into the 90s, and the 90s happened, and we had the movies that were coming out were had a bit more serious tone, I guess. So there was no more like party movies with high school party drinking and chasing girls. Like I think we've talked about like how
like
those
American
80s.
Pie.
Yeah, well, they had that, but like a lot of those 80s movies that we probably saw back then that dealt with shit like this, like you could not like do today. And so, but we crossed into that 90s threshold, and like I said, you think back at all those 90s movies, there's some serious movies, and so like I said, but maybe it was pointless to do those party montage scenes. Can
you imagine a montage scene with something like Nutshell going on the over? I don't think it'd work out. I think the 80s had more of those poppy, uplifting, fast-paced, want to dance songs. And,
Yeah,
the 90s
exactly.
grunge came around, and it's kind of like doesn't really fit the montage type of scenario for a movie.
I know there was kind of and you mentioned this, Joseph, there was kind of a renaissance for 80s screwball comedies in the late 90s, starting with American Pie, and it probably ended around 2007. I know a lot of Judd Apatow movies sort of fell in the same sort of realm, where these comedies were about they mirrored a lot of the plots that 80s comedies were about trying to lose your virginity and trying to just get through life. But they didn't use the montages. I think the montages were essentially put together because, hey, we got to get from point A to point B a lot quicker, and we don't have another half hour of film or music, or, we don't want to have the audience sit through 2 hours of what essentially is a comedy or an action movie, because they're supposed to be quick popcorn movies. And I think now we have like what, 2.5 hour comedies now. It's the world's a lot different.
Now that you mentioned it, and Bob too, we did kind of see some of that in at least the American Pie movies. There were some scenes where they were, I think in part 2, where they're doing their pain stuff, and so there's some music playing around, or they're getting prepared for the party. So they kind of had some of that. I remember specifically a lit song playing in part 2 when they're having fun at the beach and preparing for this massive party that they're gonna have. So we kind of saw a little bit of it.
You're right. Yeah, there was a little bit of a montage. Yeah, it didn't have a lot of flashbacks or bunch of different scenes, but it was all right. That was right. It was a little homage to the 80s movies.
True.
Let's wrap up our questions with this one. Was there one montage from this era that you thought was inexcusably horrible? Bob?
All right. Now bear with me here, because I'm choosing a movie that came out in 1990, but it was filmed in 1989. I think it warrants this discussion as being the worst or the most horrible or whatever, the shittiest montage of all. A movie called Hard to Kill with Steven Seagal. Oh my God. This is the anti-Rocky training montage. It is the worst action movie training montage of all time. Steven Seagal sporting the white dad shoes, a bandana, a muscle shirt with not having any actual muscle, punching a 2x4 wrapped in rope, stabbing a tree with a spear for some reason.
That was horrible.
Running like a girl up a mountain, and using acupuncture, all to fight against men with guns. It just doesn't make any fucking sense to me. It's the worst training montage of the 80s, any fucking decade, and I know it came out in 1990.
Have you seen it, man?
But it came out it was filmed in 89, so I think it fits. I think we're gonna add this in because it is the worst training montage of all time.
We'll have to post a clip of this so that people can see it.
Yeah. I got one thing to tell you, Bob. I'm taking you to the bank, the blood bank.
Yes.
Best line in that film. What about you, Joseph?
And man, this guy's gonna get mentioned a lot. Cobra, I have 2, but more so Cobra. There's a scene where
he's cutting the pizza. That's why he has this 20-inch waist.
no,
sexy ass waist.
There's a scene where he's going around town looking for information, and while this is going on, there's like a photo shoot happening in the background with Brigitte Nielsen. She's like modeling some weird clothes, and there's some robots. The photographer looks a little creepy as fuck.
It's the 80s, man.
I know. I don't know what the point of this was. Honestly, I think it was just for looks. It was for Stallone to show off Brigitte. And surprisingly, there's a movie called Over the Top. Another Stallone movie. I don't know if
he hated that movie.
When I turned his hat around.
This is the arm wrestling scene. I don't know. It's
talk bad about Over the Top.
It's a little out there. I was like, God, Stallone, what are you doing? Dude was a montage central in the 80s.
Stallone hated doing that movie Over the Top, by the way. He was contractually obligated to do it, and the writers hated it. The director, you remember the name of his character in that movie, right?
No, I don't remember. I haven't seen this movie since.
Little trivia, how much they hated this movie. His character's name was Lincoln Hawk, and the director and the writers always felt like the son in that movie, the character, was very annoying, and he was. And so the name of the son, as a joke, his name was Michael Hawk. Shorten the name Michael, and you get a joke. So I'll leave it at that. But I think the worst, and this could have probably been a whole separate episode, the worst montage had to have been the Top Gun volleyball scene. I know it's one of the more popular, but let me tell you why. It had nothing to do with the plot. Absolutely nothing to do. Poor Val Kilmer was on a contract with the studio and wanted nothing to do with this film. And I'm sure he read this part and said, fuck this horse shit. How low did they have to put the volleyball net for Tom Cruise? Are we supposed to believe at 5'4" he could spike a volleyball? And and then the following scene, he was going on a date with Kelly McGinnis's character. So he was late for a date with Kelly McGinnis's character, and she was probably thinking he's probably cheating on me. No, he was playing shirtless volleyball with the boys. So I don't know if you've seen this clip, but both Tom Cruise,
obviously,
all I know is the guys from Side Out would have whooped their ass in volleyball. Let's go Milwaukee.
There was a couple of years ago, both Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer were at a Lakers game, and they started playing Danger Zone, and they would cut to Tom Cruise in the crowd, and he was loving it. He was dancing and pointing, and then when they would cut to Val Kilmer, he was just sitting there like, fuck this. Like, get the camera off me, man. I mean, after Goose died, I'm sure Maverick's biggest regret was I should have played one more shirtless volleyball game like he wanted me to. But that was a horrible montage because it had nothing to do with the actual plot. So speaking of montages that have something to do with the plot, let's go into our honorable mentions. Guys, what do you have?
Some of them have two scenes in the movie. I got obviously Karate Kid. You're the best around. Can't talk about this subject without Rocky Four Hearts on Fire. Teen Wolf win in the end, and I think the name of the song is "Way to Go." I think it's "Way to Go." It's the scene when he first turns into the Teen Wolf and he's having fun. The team starts winning. It's another. I think it's
he's like sliding and ducking the ball, and
he's doing all the funny shit, and he's walking around school and having a good time.
Breakdancing, yeah. Okay.
Teen Wolf had two of them. That's Bloodsport, Fight to Survive, and the training scene. This is another. Speaking of training scene, speaking of training scenes, another one like so. Bloodsport had two. Revenge of the Nerds, one foot in front of the other, like Randy sang in the beginning for some reason when nobody asked, and. And this one, I was actually, I thought about picking this one, but I was kind of on the fence about it. But Bob made some points about it, so maybe I should have. I got Short Circuit 2, the chase scene at the end. To I Need a Hero.
5, I like it.
I'm pretty sure Short Circuit 2 came out in the 80s.
Yeah, I think it did, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know the first one did, so I'm just wondering how long it took for the second one to come out.
I think it was 88, 89, yeah.
Either way, the scene at the end where he's chasing the bad guy throughout the city, and this whole fucking thing where he like swings onto a boat. It's crazy. It's all to I Need a Hero. I thought it was good. Those are mine. How about you, Bob?
Of course, I had the Karate Kid as well. Then there's no way Daniel LaRusso he beat anybody in that tournament in real life. Not even fucking Lamar from Revenge of the Nerds, who was on Cobra Kai. I don't know if he got that little guest spot. Yeah, he wasn't beating any one of those guys. By the way, there was a lot of illegal head kicks in that movie. The first one by Johnny, so his little theory is bullshit in Cobra Kai. Teen Wolf, I had Teen Wolf also. If you want to see a bunch of white dudes making layups, that is the montage for you, sir. Revenge of the Nerds, the cleaning up scene, obviously when they're fixing up the house. Had Bloodsport, their fight scenes, the Kumite, that shit. Best of the Best had an awesome training scene. I don't know if y'all are into Best of the Best. I know our buddy Rico is. That's a shout out to Rico. I know he's a fanatic for Best of the Best. The Monster Squad. Yes. I love that montage. Even though Rudy was the only guy actually doing anything worth a fuck, like making silver bullets and the stakes for the vampires, and everybody else was making like Eugene was writing in crayon to the army, and then the best one was making shitty business cards that say the Monster Squad on them. Back to School. I love Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield. The studying montage was really, really great. And lastly, I have Highlander because it's shitty as well. It's one of those like it's like cringy to watch. It was like Connery's dressed like Don Quixote and what's his name is dressed like William Wallace. It's just and they have that like running on the beach, same shit as Rocky 3 kind of copycat. It's pretty bad, but I thought those were some really good mentions. What about you, Ren?
I had a lot of those, but I'll start off with The Naked Gun. Something tells me I'm into something good. My favorite part of that montage is when they're walking out of the movie theater laughing and everybody looks sad, and then the camera pans up. They walk out of Platoon.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was best. I had Revenge of the Nerds, one foot in front of the other. I love Booger's t-shirt, "Give me head till I'm dead." That's a classic.
Yeah, I was watching that one today. All the little scenes where they're doing the tricycle scene and the tug of war and all that, and the belching contest. Ogre, you asshole.
The best part of that particular scene is Takashi when he was taking hits off of Booger's.
You feel anything yet? No. You feel anything yet? And he fucking faints. No, I love the tricycle scene where like, how you feeling? Oh, fucking great.
A little trivia is I know Sting, the wrestler, wrote an article on the Players Tribune, and supposedly he was up for the role of Ogre. It was between him and Donald Gibbs, so I had never known that. But love the movie. I just watched it maybe about a year ago, and that movie just doesn't age well. I mean, there's so many things. I have a laundry list. I won't go over everything, but that movie cannot be made today because there's so many things wrong, man.
Yeah.
But you know what? That was a part of the 80s and 70s, raunchy, college type of comedy. So you got to, again, just like Blazing Saddles, you got to take it for what it was, a comedy. Yeah. I'm sure there's people nowadays that have protested and take it off our shelves. We don't want it on TV, blah, blah, blah. It is, at the time it wasn't, considered, it was just stupid comedy.
It was, and it's part of our childhood, and it was very much of its time. Mm-hmm. I had Footloose, Angry Dancing in the Warehouse to Never, Never, Never. I mean, let me smoke a cigarette and drink a beer to balance off my Bolshoi ballet dance moves.
Yeah. I mean, like, who the fuck? Like, all pissed off, you think, oh, he's going to put on like something heavy, some hard rock. No, let me dance. I just want to dance.
I mean, the way he dramatically throws himself against the boarded walls.
So sexual.
What a gymnast. I mean, I know my dad once took away my Sega Genesis, and the first thing I did was dance furiously in the living room because that's what Kevin Bacon taught me how to do. Also, like both of you, I had the Karate Kid, You're the Best, and it's all about the song. Joe Esposito's You're the Best Around was supposed to be the theme song for Rocky 3. Same director, John Avildsen, who directed the first Rocky, but Rocky 3 smartly went with Eye of the Tiger. One plot hole we have to consider is how did the Cobra Kai know that Danielson would have been good enough to advance? That's always one question. I thought he didn't face him in the first round. He faced him like in the semis and in the later rounds. So there's a lot of plot holes in that movie. I think it'll take us too long to analyze. The one guy that looked like he could fight, I think he was the stunt coordinator. He was at least 35 years old.
Yeah, I was talking about it last night with Joe. So I was like, nobody's beating that guy. That guy's whooping everybody's ass.
So Mahimachu, I think, was 35 too.
And my Queen's boy Dutch was going to kick everybody's ass. He would have kicked everybody's ass.
He would have beaten Danielson in a real. I mean, no doubt about it. That guy looked like a badass. I also had Teen Wolf win in the end. Chubby with a hook shot. By the way, he's played by our buddy Mark Holton, who follows us on Instagram and answers all of our stupid questions.
Can I say something, Mark? I watched that movie religiously when I was a kid. I loved that movie. Even when I got into high school, I'd watch that. It would still fire me up for football practice and everything. Yeah. I love that. I still to this day love that movie and that ending scene, even though it's funny because, it's just a bunch of white dudes making layups to catch up when they're down by 20 points, which is, funny in itself. But I love that movie, dude. Thank you for making that. Thank you for being a part of that.
And I very much appreciate his performance in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Oh, yeah.
I watched that movie a lot, too. I still watch that movie
as a kid, man.
Just hilarious.
Chewing gum.
We love our buddy Mark Holton, but Michael.
You do believe me? Sorry.
No, you're good. Michael J. Fox's shooting form is just brutal. I mean,
no, it's not the shooting form that's bad. It's he gets a steal and he's staring down at the ball while he's dribbling the entire. Something we teach our junior high kids not to do these days, and he's doing it as a senior in high school. Dribble with your eyes up, cabrón.
There was I think the director had mentioned that he had them sort of show off their basketball skills in the beginning, and he said it was like the worst basketball he'd ever seen. He was like, I don't know how we're going to edit this shit because these guys can't do anything. But I also had Dirty Dancing, Hungry Eyes. Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze hated each other during the filming of Red Dawn. He wrote her a letter of apology for this movie. You can't deny their chemistry. It was palpable. It's a movie that takes place in the 50s, but every song playing over the scene is from the 80s, so it makes total sense, right? A lot of close-up of abs, too, so fun scene to watch, right?
If you got him, you fly him.
Yeah. Really quickly, Better Off Dead. The skiing montage was great. And Valley Girl, I'll Stop the World and Melt with You. That first date
it's a
between
great
Nicolas
song.
Cage, before Nicolas Cage went crazy. I mean, he was just
His new movie looks fucking awesome, though. I'm just gonna throw that out there. His new movie looks badass.
We love Nicolas Cage. Who, what, where, why? Yeah, we love Nicolas Cage. And then that's all I had for my honorable mention. So we're gonna go on to our selections. I'm going up first. And my selection was There's No Easy Way Out from the Rocky IV movie. I want to give
Even
you guys.
You sound unsure of yourself.
I had to make sure there's a million of them. So I'm going to take you guys to some personal history here. Why I was inspired for this selection. So my medical exam, my yearly physical, helped inspire this selection. So I'm 45 years old. I'm a man of a certain age. So I had my first physical that featured a very intrusive exam. And I think you guys know the exam I'm talking about. I had a new doctor, and this nurse called me up a few days ahead of time and asked me if I wanted to have the prostate exam. And she asked like so nonchalantly, as if she was a server at Applebee's, asking me if I wanted fried pickles as an appetizer. I said, yeah, sure. Throw it in with a ranch. We'll be fine. So I want to preface this by saying I'm going to be serious for a moment. Any and all jokes are at my personal expense and just self-deprecation. I'm healthy, and but any sort of medical exams or screenings are important for prevention and for treatment. The more you know, of course. And we come from a very homogenous area. Bob, Joseph, and I from the Rio Grande Valley. It's steeped in machismo, so not many people talk about healthcare, especially when it comes to this. You know, in all seriousness, I lost both my parents. I lost my father when he was in his 50s. I lost my best friend of 22 years who passed away 1 week after turning 30. And in many ways, he helped to inspire this podcast, and he would have been a part of it, I'm sure. And 3 years ago, I lost a friend who was in his 40s, all way too young. And in many ways, their deaths could have been preventable. I want to be here for a long time for my family and, of course, for this podcast. I'd like to be around for episode 300 when we discuss oldest looking actor to play a high school student. My pick, by the way, is Ian Ziering from 90210, who looked old enough to have a prostate exam by sophomore year. Let me just say that. Lastly, we also have many male listeners of a certain age. Our older listeners, like our boy Rob McMullen, who is super supportive on Instagram, and who might be at an age where he's had more fingers inside of him than Fozzie Bear. He tell you the importance of preventative care, I'm sure. So get checked, get screened, and stay healthy, everyone. Okay, so what does it all have to do with my selection? My son inherited my sort of obsession when it comes to things, with the most asinine things. But that's the reason why I'm on this podcast, right? My son, who is 7, is currently obsessed with the Rocky movies. He's seen them all, even Rocky Balboa, except he hasn't seen Rocky 5 because I love him too much and I can't allow that to happen. But he talks about them nonstop. So back to my exam. I was waiting for the doctor, my new doctor, to arrive as the nurse exited. To calm myself down, I like to watch cheesy 80s movies. My dentist has an overhead TV screen, and I've requested to watch shit like Bloodsport, American Ninja, Best of the Best, you name it. I open up my HBO Max app, and I see that Rocky IV is on because that's the last movie my son was watching. He was watching that on my phone. So I started watching it. A few minutes later, the door pops open, and I hear a really gruff voice say, "Good morning." And this guy sounded like Bradley Cooper in A Star is Born. Only his voice was legitimate because this dude was like 6'7", 300 pounds. I was hoping to hear, "Tell me something, girl," but no luck. So this guy walks in, and I immediately notice that this doctor has hands like Kawhi Leonard. So I'm already talking like Rocky, you know, a little nervous. Not only that I'm wearing a gown, I don't think he wants to shake my hand. So do I curtsy? What's the appropriate situation here? And the gown wasn't very flattering on me.
Just don't bow. Just don't bow.
Just don't bow the right way, right? I'm not going to go into further detail, but I'm a bit nervous. But something calms me down at this point. I start hearing the synthesizer and that classic bass line in my head. I start having a black and white flashback of earlier that day when I told my wife I was going downtown to protest our property taxes. And she shouts at me, "You can't win." And I shot back, "I'm a fighter. That's the way I was made. That's who you married." So anyway, enough of that. I'm healthy. Why did I pick that montage? First of all, the song. Aside from the fact that the singer Robert Tepper looks exactly like every early 90s WWF wrestler all mashed into one person. You have to watch this video, everybody. It's like Michael Madsen and Michael Bolton had a kid. This song in this video is undeniably 80s. And here's a comment from Robert Tepper, lead singer of No Easy Way Out. He said, "It was written about my first divorce. It's an ending It's an end of a relationship song, which is what Rocky should have filed for since his wet blanket wife had zero belief in him. If there ever was a cheat code for a montage, this song and that scene discovered it. Rocky hops in his Lamborghini, license plate Southpaw, which was very cool, shifts 28 times down a winding road, and the only live action is Stallone looking like someone asked him to name all 50 U.S. state capitals. The entire montage is flashbacks, and only Rocky Balboa, he would have a flashback of his best friend getting murdered, his wedding, and the birth of his son, all in the same flashback. People will say the training montages are the calling cards for Rocky. True, I don't disagree with that. But what I do disagree with is that this montage had training, by the way, and Stallone still had the playful beach water splashing scene with Carl Weathers in there. This is a pivotal scene because it encompasses all about what our hero is about. His failures, his triumphs, his history, his amazing Hugo Boss long sleeve rugby polo. This is a montage in every sense of the word because it's an amalgamation of every badass scene from all of the previous Rockies. We're at the zenith of this music video era, and 70% of this movie is an MTV music video. If you haven't watched Rocky IV, that's all it is, right? People may like the Burning Hearts or Hearts on Fire montage because it fires them up, but what's pervasive in these Rocky movies is that he's a flawed individual, and the scene I selected encompasses that because he can't even mourn his best friend's death without showing us his personal highlight reel. Lastly, it's relatable. How many times have we been in the car, put on a song that elicits an emotional response, and pretend we're in the freaking music video? No contest. It's the best. Now throw in the damn towel. What do you guys think about this scene?
I don't know how to respond now. I had all these.
Before Joseph starts, can I just ask a question? Did you shave before your appointment? That's my
before and after.
No, but I cried. Okay, go ahead, Joseph. I'm sorry.
All right, I'll try. Randy got a little serious, so my initial my initial thought, my initial feelings when you made this selection, Randy, was that you disappoint me. Of all the montages that you could have picked, you didn't even pick the best one in that movie.
Which is
Hearts on Fire.
Oh, come on.
We're gonna get into it. Keep going, Joseph. We'll get into it right now.
All right, so first off, the song sucks. It does. I was forced to work out to this song once. It did not by a friend.
Why?
You weren't forced when I was forced to do it. Just to say that, right?
There was no motivation whatsoever while I was doing this. I honestly, I think it was kind of it's this scene, this montage in particular is I'm going to call it a montage because I just think it's pointless. And I understand that he's missing his friend and he's missing everybody that's been there in his corner. That includes Mickey and all those situations. Because you see those clips. You see a lot of clips that are no longer with him. But I don't feel like we needed a 4-minute and 22-second impromptu music video to understand this feeling. There could have been a nice reflection, a scene where he goes and stands on the steps where his statue is, or looks over the city and has these flashbacks or whatnot. But we didn't need a fucking music video. I mean, was Robert Tepper a personal friend of Sylvester Stallone? I don't know.
He sang in Cobra.
Okay,
he did, yeah.
And it sounds like he was. So I'm sure he told him. He talked to him and said, "Hey, yo, I'm going to feature your song in my movie." Seriously. Like, why is this song in there? Jokes aside,
am I the only one that doesn't have a Stallone impression? Jesus Christ.
Jokes aside, is definitely a montage. Like I said, I just believe it's pointless because I don't feel it carries the story forward. It's more of a reflection of the past. I mean, that's just me. I understand what you said, and I can kind of see your point, but for me, I didn't see that. I think this scene was probably a deal breaker for Stallone. He's like, I need that scene to show my sensitive side so I can do stop when my mom will shoot. Like I said, dude, the training montage shows growth for the character. I think that was a better choice. We see a progression in his character in the Hearts on Fire scene, overcoming this pain that he's feeling and getting himself in a better position.
Oh, don't mention better position with Randy here. We just talked about that.
I think and then of course the music worked great in that scene. So I think even the Rocky One Gonna Fly was a better choice. Where that train. I mean, pretty much any Rocky training scene, I think worked out obviously great with the music. But that's how I feel on this pick. What about you, Bob?
All right. Okay, first off, they misspelled Southpaw on the license plate, so that threw me off. I was like, "You're that fucking rich in that mansion, and you can't spell Southpaw correctly on your license plate."
I think you can put all the letters.
I know. Come on, man. That was my attempt at it. Okay. The flashbacks of him and Apollo. By the way, the song is great. I know, Joseph, you don't like it. I love the song. The song is great. We're not indestructible, Joseph. Come on, man. I love the song, and I love the flashbacks of him and Apollo, the training together, the fighting together. You know, him seeing him. I thought that was wonderful, and it fit the scene perfectly. What I didn't like about the montage is that I didn't get the flashbacks with Adrian. I know she just called him a pussy at the top of the stairs. You can't win. You know what I mean? I get that, but I mean, why is there scenes of him deflowering Adrian? You know, I don't get that. I don't understand where that fit the narrative here. Why would that in the montage, him in a white beater and, you know, and then her taking her to the first time they had sex. I thought that was just, you know, that was out there. I didn't need that. You know, it would have been better of him just having the flashbacks with Apollo and maybe, you know, driving to the cemetery, you know, standing or crying over his gravestone, you know, something like that. Yeah. But no, instead, let me show you when I hit it with Adrian, my wife, for the first fucking time. Yeah. Hearts on Fire. That montage, the training montage, is the montage. If you chose that one, Rand, I don't think anybody would have an argument for that one. You know, Rocky with the Serpico beard, old school versus new school training. You know, roids versus all natural.
B12 shots, sir.
America versus them goddamn commies, bastards. You know, no pain. You know, I can change, you can change, everybody can change. That was the fucking scene, man. Lifting you don't need weights, you just need a wheelbarrow with your buddy sitting in it, your wife, your wife's brother, and your fucking, you know, your trainer in it. You know what I mean? That was the most ripped I'd seen him. And Rocky was ripped in Rocky 3, but in Rocky 4, man, he was in great shape. But that shows, I mean, he ran up a fucking mountain fully clothed in snow boots. Joseph was like, yeah, he's wearing too many clothes. What do you mean he's wearing too many? It's fucking cold, man. Going up a mountain.
He's not even wearing athletic sneakers.
Yeah, this is the 80s. They're saying running shoes, bunch of pussies. You ain't running shoes. Going up a mountain, wear whatever shoes you got on. So, yeah, that was a great scene. Screaming Drago at the top of the mountain, you know, outrunning a car in the snow. That was the scene, man. That was the scene. I think if you had chose that scene, you wouldn't hear any pushback from any of us.
It'd be hard to argue.
It'd be very hard to argue against, but I think that was the scene. That was the best training scene as far as 80s montages go.
What was the joke that we made? This is what it's like when you ask your wife, or tell your wife, hey, you mind if I go out and have a few beers with the guys? And she says no. Just go get groceries.
You gotta go pick up diapers for the kids. And you get in the car and we're not in this truck.
Son of a bitch.
Never do anything in this.
That's part of it. Let me ask you guys this question to further my defense. And you know, this is fresh on my mind. The whole Rocky and Adrian, she didn't believe in him situation. But do you agree that the scene was pivotal? So your problem is the scene is good, or the thought of the scene is good. It just wasn't executed right.
Yeah,
very much.
Well, okay. In Joseph's case, I think that the scene was good. She tells him he can't win, and you know the whole world's crashing down. His best friend just died. He wants to fight this guy. His wife tells him he can't win, so he goes in his car to reflect. And I get it, you know, some guys, you know, whatever they got to do, they run, they work out, they reflect, they go on a forward cruise. The flashback scenes of him screwing his wife, I don't understand why that was part of it. You know what I mean? I know she just told him, she called him a pussy. You know what I mean? She just called him, hey, you're kind of a little bitch, bro. You can't win. You can't win. So that's the only part I didn't get.
To elaborate on that real quickly, yes, the sentiment of the scene I think is great. I think it could have worked. He's definitely needs a period to reflect and to mourn and to look back at, you know, pivotal moments in his life with each character. One is just his best friend. Like Bob mentioned, I didn't even think of that. Could have gone to the gravesite, to the gravestone, had maybe a 2-minute scene of him walking down the street, or like how I mentioned, going to the steps and looking down at the city.
Yeah,
something
like that. Yeah, I think it would have been wonderful.
Yeah. I get it, but just like his training scene, and we're all in agreement that Rocky 4 is a fucking music video from beginning to end. It's all it is. But if you notice in the movie,
we defeated the commies, Randall.
They play music. They play the whole songs throughout the movie. So
they do.
So the thing is, if we're listening to this song by Sylvester Stallone's buddy, who looks like a cross between Michael Madsen and Michael Bolton, if he goes and he goes to like Apollo's gravesite, that's 30 seconds. You can't get the song in. I don't know how you fill the time.
The song didn't need to be featured.
Yeah, no, I
They
know.
had
The
to.
song was a feature.
No.
The song was great. If they did the flashbacks with him and Apollo, the training, the fighting, him falling and then the towel falling simultaneously, you know what I mean? I love that. But if it ended up, with all those scenes that ended up him parked, staring at a gravesite or a graveyard.
Well, that makes better.
Perfect.
That makes more
perfect
sense
altogether. I just didn't think those scenes with Apollo were great, and then it kind of went downhill. Like, hey, look at Adrian. I'm gonna take off her glasses and deflower her.
So here's
it sounds like a dance song, more of a sad reflection song.
So here's the thing about Adrian. I think they added a lot of the Adrian flashback scenes because there was a lot of things Rocky was doubting. He was doubting himself because he didn't throw in the towel and his best friend died. So essentially he killed him. And then secondly, I think he was. Whoa!
Wait
a minute.
Okay, we're gonna go back to that.
Let me finish my point. So I think secondly, he was starting to think his marriage was falling apart. So he was trying to find himself, and he was like, "Well, let me find a better time with Adrian when we were getting married, when we were going to the zoo, when we were having our first kid, and I need to find that connection I had with Adrian because my life is falling apart. I'm about to get ripped apart by this Russian. I killed my best friend, and now my wife and I are on the brink of divorce. So what are you going to think about? You're going to think about all that shit.
Okay, first off, it wasn't just they wouldn't show his first kid. They showed making his first kid. That was the problem. Your best friend decided, why are you thinking about fucking your wife? What's wrong with you? Okay, secondly, was Rocky the only one with a towel? Throw the damn towel. Was he the only one? Like, fucking the trainer didn't have a towel there and something. He couldn't jump in the fucking ring and stop the fight. It's Rocky's fault and his Hugo Boss hoodie that he couldn't stop the fight. I don't think so. There's other people there could have jumped in and stopped the fight. The goddamn exhibition, for God's sakes.
I think that I think the scene makes sense. I just don't like the way they did it. I don't need to hear the song.
You know, when you get that one shirt that you like and you want to show it off, when Stallone put on that Hugo Boss polo, that he knew he looked good. He's like, I got to feature this when I look sad. I got to feature it.
Beautiful. I'll just raise the sleeve so they know I'm serious.
All right, guys, let's move on to your pick, Bob.
I can talk Rocky 4 all day. That's all I'm saying. I can talk Rocky 4 all fucking day. For me, when we mentioned this topic and we decided on this topic, I knew somehow, some way, shape, or form, I had to mention the best teen movie of the 80s, The Breakfast Club. And I had to mention a John Hughes movie because John Hughes, he just,
for sure,
the man, the biggest director of the 80s, and all his movies were so huge in the 80s. So I went with The Breakfast Club. The montage in this movie is probably has some of the most memorable scenes of the entire 80s, man. Where this oddball group of misunderstood teens decide to get high and dance the afternoon away as they're stuck in detention, just like, everybody else did in the 80s, right? Funny backstory too that goes along with this. Apparently in the original script, only Molly Ringwald's character was supposed to be dancing, but she was kind of apprehensive and nervous about it. So she convinced John Hughes to change it so that way all the characters are joining and dancing along. And thank God for that, because it gave us, and I know I'm speaking for Randall here, the greatest dance performance since Mick Jagger and Emilio Estevez, baby. I don't know what was more unbelievable, him screaming and shattering the glass in the library, or John Hughes keeping this scene in the movie and convincing Emilio, man, you did great, bro. You look sexy as hell. See that dancing? That's dancing. That's what dancing looks like. All jokes aside, of course, this scene is extremely fun. It's extremely 80s, from the oddball characters and their outfits to them, laughing and giggling and them dancing together, and the way they dance and the different ways they dance, from, Judd Nelson climbing the statue and kind of rocking out to a song that's supposed to be rock. It was by Carla DeVito, We're Not Alone, which, Judd Nelson was making it seem like he was listening to Pantera at the time, fucking banging his head and rocking out. It was a great scene. I love the scene where they're dancing on the ledge together, the guys and the girls and everybody. Everything about it was awesome. Minus Emilio S. I love you, Emilio. Emilio, you're my man, the Mighty Ducks. But holy shit, that was some of the worst dancing since Mick Jagger and Dancing in the Street. It's just terrible. Randy's going to tell you that he tried his best and that it was all right. That's not bad. It's the 80s, bro. Come on, man. But he's lying to you, Emilio. Don't listen to him, bro. It was terrible. You should punch John Hughes in the mouth for allowing that to happen. But that's my pick, guys. I know a lot of females that were around the 80s, they'd love this movie. I still love this movie.
Great movie.
It's a classic 80s teen movie, man, and I think this is the montage to go with.
I gotta tell you about.
Here it is. Here it is.
No. Okay, so very much
wasn't a real rocker.
it's very much an iconic scene. Why? Because people talk about it a lot to this very day. Here we are talking about it right now. We've seen other movies and TV shows pay homage to John Hughes and do their own version of this scene, and somehow, so I mean, clearly it's iconic. It's not my cup of tea, this particular scene. I think it's funny more than anything, with the kids getting high and cutting loose. I know they're, the whole situation. And you're right, Emilio looks like he got the joint that was laced with crack, though.
Yes.
Because I mean, who knows what he's thinking when he's doing his quote unquote dance. That fucker's doing cartwheels and jumping over bookshelves.
Fucking sound room or something.
He's throwing punches and jumping off the wall, and then suddenly he screams so loud that he breaks a glass. I mean, cocaine's a hell of a drug, but I mean, I did not understand that part. Yeah, the dances are iconic, very much so. It's memorable. I know we see in, like I said, a lot of movies, even if they're not kind of necessarily doing a scene like this or some kind of like, not in a library or the same situation, but you see like I don't know what to call the dance, but the foot, that one. It's very memorable. And I just don't think
for all the wrong reasons.
I just think that when you rank it up there on the list of montages, I think there's a lot of our honorable mentions that we talked about. Hell, I'm surprised you didn't go with Hearts on Fire, to be honest with you. Either of you. I mean, if one of you all had gone with that, I think they would have both been whoever it was.
Well, I didn't want to go with that because I didn't want that. I already had those points to argue against Rand, and I didn't want my pick to just be an argument against him. I wanted to choose something. By the way, Breakfast Club is just, the number one teen movie.
I know. I got that. For me, and I talked about this with you the other day about how it's kind of hard. Sometimes it might be hard to define exactly what we consider a montage. Is it just a scene with music, or does it like... Because like I think we talked about the beginning of Back to the Future, and he's like, oh, I'm late for school, and it's really just a scene. It's just a scene happening with the music overlaid, and that's kind of what I look at this.
I think this one was more of them bonding. It kind of moved the story forward.
Yeah, I agree.
They were all kind of different, but they smoked together. Then they started dancing together, and then after that, they kind of become really, really buddy, and start like talking to each other seriously, and start bonding. So I think that this was that kind of scene. It wasn't just like, oh, don't take money, I'm gonna skateboard through the town to get to school. Like, which you know what I mean. I think that separates it from the Back to the Future opening.
You made it. All right, I see what your point is there. Like I said, I surprised you went with this one. Obviously, like you mentioned, it is one of the most showing your sensitive side. It is one of the most iconic movies of all time. Like I mentioned, this scene is so iconic in the dances and the songs and everything. I mean, I think there's other ones in your honorable mentions that are better that you could have gone with.
All right,
that was uncalled for. That was uncalled for.
Smack in the face on that one. So this is definitely pure 80s. And Bob, I had it on my notes too. In the script, Molly Ringwald's character Claire was supposed to be the only one dancing. She was self-conscious about it. Oddly enough, she was the only one that could dance. So everybody else made a damn fool of themselves. Emilio Estevez. Is he supposed to be a wrestler or a gymnast? I don't know in this scene. But the thing, one of my biggest gripes is that weed, and Joseph, you said this, weed doesn't make you act like this. Cocaine does. Are we sure his brother Charlie wasn't on the set that day? Because what the hell was going on? That's such a boomer. That is such a boomer portrayal of the effects of marijuana, the whole Nancy Reagan just say no boomer era. It's been corrected in decades since, but whoever blocked and choreographed that scene wasn't a smoker, but then again, maybe Bender laced the joints with dust, because I mean that's the only reason I could think of. The screen.
I mean, you don't like to dance when you're high, Red? That's the only way I can get on the dance floor, by drinking Jack Daniels. So I'm on their side. I'm just saying. I don't know about the shattering shit, but the screen. That's your problem.
The scream that shattered the glass door, I thought was. They should have cut that out. I thought that was lame. I couldn't remember the song. And here's the thing, and here's my next big gripe. To have a memorable 80s montage, we remember the dancing, we remember the bouncing around, but I can't remember the song. They could have picked a better song. I don't remember the name of the song. Aside from Don't You Forget About Me, the whole soundtrack was weak. I mean, teen movies like Valley Girl, The Last American Virgin, Risky Business, all these had amazing soundtracks, but Breakfast Club dropped the ball there. I think they could have picked a much better song for this scene. And then back to the music, if Bender was a true headbanger, he wouldn't be dancing to this song. And you have the nerd, Anthony Michael Hall, select the music for this dance montage. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. I will say this. I will say this to set the stage for any future group dance montages. I think Judd Nelson being 38 years old hurts this scene.
25. He was 25.
Obviously, it's the 80s, and there isn't any diversity, so it's white people dancing blandly to music that's not very danceable. So, leave it at that, right? And have you ever been in detention or in school? I know you guys were athletes. I don't know if you've ever been in school suspension. I have.
Joseph was.
Yeah, I have.
I have. Let me tell you this, Joseph. And let me see if you guys agree. And anybody out there who's ever been in detention or in school suspension, there was never any romantic connections there. The only females in my detention were teen moms, but they were all taken, at least for the semester. But they were all taken. I mean,
that was a
Joseph. What do you think, Joseph?
Well, funny
Get
story.
me out of it.
Funny story. I remember one time being sent to in school suspension, or as we called it, ISS. Walking in, opening the door, and seeing my older brother sitting in the seat as soon as I walked in, and one of our coaches. One of the PE coaches who we've known forever. As soon as I opened the door, he says, "Son of a bitch, the other one." Jesus Christ. And I just looked at my brother. We both like smiled and laughed at each other like, what the fuck?
Because Joseph never liked to tuck in his shirt. Okay, quick question. Who more aggressive dancer, Emilio Estevez in The Breakfast Club or Kevin Bacon in Footloose in that scene? Who was more aggressive? I don't know.
Kevin Bacon
had a cigarette and he was frustrated with life.
But the thing about Kevin Bacon is all. I think 10% of the dancing is Kevin Bacon, and I think the rest of it is some professional dancer.
He loses.
Emilio Estevez. Nobody could choreograph that horrible cartwheel and
everybody just trying to stay away. Like, don't break anything, fucker. Don't break it. Don't punches and shit.
Like Kevin Bacon is doing like Olympic gymnast shit in a bar or in a warehouse.
Chris Penn was very stiff and aggressive in Footloose as well, so we can kind of compare them two.
All right, Joseph, what do you got for us?
All right, so probably the only scene that can compete with Hearts on Fire, which I'm surprised none of y'all picked again. This scene, sometimes called the push it to the limit.
Why didn't you pick it, goddammit?
Because I was able to pick this one. Sometimes called push it to the limit scene or Tony's rise to power, the scene from Scarface, whatever you want to call it. As awesome as it is, I believe it has the benefit of being set up perfectly with the Babylon Club shooting scene, the Every Dog Has His Day scene with the killing of Frank and Mel. I mean, this was set up so perfectly with these two scenes. It just kind of speaks to this movie in general. It's just a great fucking movie. And then we get this montage scene, which to me really starts with Tony staring at the blimp that says the world is yours with that ominous, music that plays, then and at the end of the movie that what was it, like a fucking an organ? I don't know what the hell it was. Anyway, so it starts off with the counting of the money, that iconic sound from the film that's probably been used many times in a lot of different hip hop artists from the 2000s. I think I even recall hearing it in a 50 Cent song. I'm not sure which one. And Paul fucking Ingman's Push It to the Limit. I mean, the perfect match, like a lamb and tuna fish, This is the ultimate rise to power, played out with key scenes to show just how powerful the character of Tony Montana is becoming. We got him laughing it up with Sosa on the phone, probably talking about, deals and money and gazpacho recipes, more counting of large sums of money. We got Tony and his goons showing up to the bank for maybe their first load of money to launder through the crooked bank employee, all while this awesome Push It to the Limit song is going on. Walk Along the Razors. I mean, it's perfect. He starts investing and opening up businesses like Montana Management Company, which we all know is a front, Montana Travel Company, Gina Salon, probably their only legit business, more money counting, more money to the bank, even more bags, so much more that the bank employee looks concerned because it might be causing too much, maybe raising too many eyebrows. It's all power, all fast, and all Tony basically saying, I'm in charge and I have arrived. We see him get married to Elvira in that lavish mansion. He flexes his wealth even more by bringing all his wedding guests to check out his tiger, which looks like it's only being held back by a fucking bike chain, which is really weird. I mean, come on, bro. Yeah, I think that's
the tiger had to cross a creek, though.
Yeah, well, you know what? That creek didn't look very, very, very deep. He gets the portrait done. He's lavish spending on clothes and it just all works out perfectly with the song. I will say though, the ending of just with Elvira doing some coke, I thought that was kind of like, why did it end on this? Like, what is it? Like the effects of everything that's happening is making her do drugs. So that's I can kind of say that part didn't need it. I think this is what a montage is, a series of events or images in a film to show a progression in the story, layered over with some kick-ass songs. Great song to give context to the movie, and I think this was perfectly done. The song has you hooked into the events happening in front of you, and if you're watching the movie, you should be rooting for the character of Tony Montana. And this montage makes you feel good about where he's heading. You cheer him on, and that was the point to be made with this one, and I think it was executed to perfection. What about you guys?
Did you say rooting for Tony Montana, the murderous drug lord?
I was rooting for him.
He's the man.
They almost killed him, and he survived.
He survived about 80 shots to the gut as well.
I love how it starts off with the money counting and the 30-pound portable phones. I mean, that was like the peak of luxury back in early 80s. A great song. I mean, I love this song. If you had absolutely no idea what Scarface was about, you can show them this 3-minute and 43-second montage, and it tells you everything. It tells you about the money, the power, how Tony's rising up, his marriage, Manolo and Gina at the wedding, flirting with each other. Tony looks happy. I love the banker's face. And you mentioned this, Joseph. The second time they visit this bank, and he's like, how the fuck am I going to wash all this money?
Yeah.
Like, take a fucking offshore account or something, man. You guys are going to get me in trouble. So the song in the montage gives us a false sense of security. This is the pinnacle of Tony Montana's power, as we've noticed. But everything after this goes downhill. And that's what I think what the brilliance of this movie is, because the montage hits right at the point where it was the peak of Tony's crime career. Everything goes to shit after this. You mentioned the tiger and the leash, which I had on my notes. And I love how they all go and see the tiger. They all have food in their hands. Like, what is this fucking tiger going to do? It's got a bicycle chain around its neck. But I will say this. There is a better use for this song, and I love the song. But Cartman in South Park doing the Special Olympics. You remember that episode?
Jesus Christ. I thought you were going to say Rick Ross did a better cover of it.
When he was studying tapes to how to be a special, he was watching a Kid Rock video. He was watching a Kid Rock video.
I remember.
Okay, and here's the one thing. Here's the flaw I found in this montage, and I'm being very nitpicky here, but I didn't realize how short Al Pacino was when he gets off the van, when he gets out of the van to go to the bank. First off, he's the boss. What is he doing driving the van to the bank? If you're a boss, you're not going to drive. Secondly, he has to hop off the van like a second grader being dropped off at school. That doesn't look intimidating. I mean, come on, you could have had Al Pacino get off on the curb. He wouldn't have to jump off. I mean, it just didn't look very. It lost me on that. I would have liked to have seen a dance scene at the wedding at Tony and Elvira's wedding. Would it have killed Brian De Palma to give us 7 seconds of the chicken dance to humanize these monsters? I mean, come on. So pure 80s fantasy. I love the hyperbole and the feel, but I think that this could have mixed in, in the glorifying with some sort of relatability. I think that's the thing that this scene is missing, is that it has everything that you're striving for: the money, the wealth, the power, the connections, the business,
the drugs.
There's no relatability, and I get it. Like, how are you going to relate to a drug lord? But I think that's what a lot of movies do nowadays. Breaking Bad, I know it's a show, and these other movies, that they find a way to relate the audience to the main character. Sopranos did it very well as well, and I don't think Scarface did it. It's an excellent movie. It's one of my my favorite movies, but there is no sense of relatability, and everything is just so grim and just, I mean, it's just over the top. One thing I do like is I love that camera walk where Tony and his gang just walk into the camera. It looks very much like a Vice City video game.
Yeah.
And that's one of the coolest shots in any movie. But I think it's just so like, oh man, I mean, how could you root for these guys? These guys are just scum of the earth. And that's why I can't give this my seal of approval. I love this scene. I love this movie, but I mean, we're glorifying monsters here. Bob, what's your take?
Hey guys, don't speak with your heart, Rand. Don't speak with your heart. I need to go back to what Joseph said. He said something like, what was that, an organ? Which coincidentally, that's exactly what Randy said when the doctor started the procedure. Sorry, I had to throw that in there.
He pushed it to the limit, Bob.
Pushed it to the limit.
The next time you do that, it's never going to be the same. It's never going to be the same.
I'll be back in 2 weeks.
Yo, at the end of it, Randy was just like Michelle Pfeiffer at the end of this montage, doing a bump and sitting in her nightgown with his hair slicked back, like, why? I hate my life. Drinking white wine.
Bob, you know, like, I'm sorry, man. I'm not like seriously, but you know, the next time that you do that, you're gonna start laughing before it happens. You're gonna ask, what the hell's the matter with you? You need to calm down.
He might lose his wedding ring if I do.
Are you wearing cologne? Are you wearing aftershave?
Cut.
I love this scene. It was actually going to be my pick. It was a big struggle between this one and The Breakfast Club. I decided to go with The Breakfast Club, thankfully, because I know Joseph really, really loved this movie and this scene. This is one of my favorite movies. I wanted to say I chose Scarface for another scene in a different episode for baddest movie death. Thought it was pretty awesome. You know, I love how it ends with Michelle Pfeiffer taking a bump in her nightgown, drinking wine, smoking a cigarette, like, fuck this is my life. The scene itself is extraordinary. Like Randy said, he nailed it. That if you needed to know what the movie was about, I mean, this 3.5 minutes, pretty much describes it all. Tony in power, dropping off, bundles and bundles of cash at the bank. I don't like the fact that he's in love with his sister. That always strikes me as weird. He even smiles at her and looks at her in the montage, and it's kind of like, why, bro? Why? You have Michelle Pfeiffer in front of you, bro. What the fuck are you looking at your sister for? Although his sister was awesome in the movie she did with Ed Harris. What was that one? Where they found aliens under the water. What was it called? Goddamn, why am I blanking?
We'll have to look at that.
Ed Harris, come on. Ed Harris, he gives it, come on. He has to do CPR on her. And they find aliens under the water. 80s movie. God damn it. No, not Cocoon. I'm not talking about William Brimley or whatever. I'm not talking about a fucking oatmeal commercial.
Walter Brimley.
Wilford, goddamn.
Wilford Brimley.
Croce.
All right, anyway,
what was the name of it? Ed Harris. You got to Google that while I'm
We'll Google it. Go keep talking.
Yeah, I'm going to keep talking.
The Abyss.
The Abyss. Thank you very much. It was in The Abyss. God damn it. Anyways, going back to it. I think that the only thing that it lacks, like it's a little bit over the top with it, but the one thing that it lacks for me, and I know this is probably going to it might sound stupid, you might get it. It does not remind me of the 80s at all. Like this scene specifically doesn't feel like the 80s. The way they're dressed feels like 70s. The way, it has a big time 70s feel to it. Their clothes, their attire, their wedding, the house, everything about the scene gives off a 70s feel. I know it takes place in 83, but it gives off a big time 70s feel. And that's just my personal preference. And the argument may not hold water, but to me, it just kind of throws me off a little bit. You know what I mean? If you were talking like Miami Vice, it took place in the same state and everything like that. But Miami Vice, still, of course, obviously it's big time 80s. And I think this kind of felt like 70s to me. I don't know what it was. It wasn't like a John Hughes movie who screams 80s. Even Rocky and Rocky 4 screamed 80s with the Cold War and everything like that. This movie in general, in this montage, doesn't scream 80s to me, even though it has Push It to the Limit as the song. But other than that, it's extremely hard to argue. It has two of my favorite actors and actresses of all time, Michelle Pfeiffer, and I keep saying that because it was a key Key and Peele skit, and I know our friends at it. Who mentioned it? One of the girls that did not need to know podcast. They thought that was hilarious. Yeah, Michelle Pfeiffer, her, and then Al Pacino. I love that they did another movie together. Frank and what was it called? It was Frank and Angie. I think it was Frank and Angie that they did together in the 80s. Joseph's favorite pizza restaurant. in Austin, by the way.
I love that place so much.
But yeah, I just don't. It doesn't scream. It's a great montage. I love the movie. I love the scene. It just doesn't scream 80s to me.
I can get your vibe. I can understand your how you feel.
My vibe, bro?
No,
my vibe?
I can understand.
Told you, Rand?
I can understand what you mean by
trying to make it light of the shitty situation. Not shitty, but you know
what you mean by the feel. It's not the the typical 80s like fashion, like later 80s, I guess the stuff we see and like
for sure
like Back to the Future. I understand that, but it's like you said, when the movie takes place, maybe we're still influenced by the last few years of the 70s. You know what I mean?
Well, coming from a place where we come from, which is primarily Hispanic, we were always like 10 years behind the time when it came to fashion. So I don't know if you could blame Scarface on that.
Well, was it Euro Trip? Hey, we got new Miami Vice, new number one new TV show. It's like 2003.
But there is a difference between like Miami Vice, like if you see it in the tone, like the Miami Vice 80s versus the California 80s. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like you see that difference in like movies and that TV show. It's the suits, I guess. I don't know. I can see a difference in that, and I get what Bob's saying.
And Scarface takes place in Miami as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But it's not like the
storyline takes place like in 1980, but it still gives off a 70s vibe. Whereas Miami Vice, they were just too cool for school. You know, they were listening to a flock of seagulls in their cars. They're chasing down criminals.
There's a difference in the fashion. I see that. You're not wearing like you just look at like what was worn in Back to the Future versus what was worn.
Well, and look at his sister. His sister was still wearing like the fro, the teased hair fro. I mean, you didn't really see that as much in the 80s. You know what I mean? You saw teased hair, but it wasn't like the fro that she was sporting. So it has a 70s feel for me to me. So
I got you. I can understand.
It doesn't scream 80s to me. So that's the only thing that knocks it down a few pegs.
It's hard to believe that this movie was a box office bomb because it's so good.
Well, I know
Al Pacino's mentioned. I mean,
and we're not just saying that because of like the subject matter and this macho like it's action.
The fucking movie
it's a good movie.
It's a brilliant movie, and Al Pacino's mentioned it's his favorite role. I mean, this guy's played legendary characters, and he's always said Tony Montana is his all-time favorite role, and he's gone on record to say that, and it's just an amazing movie. And I think it's been appreciated after, just like many things. It's just with age, it just gets better. So, guys, final questions. If there's just
holy shit, I think he said, "Cut it, motherfucker! Got to take a leak."
If montages were more prevalent as they were in the 80s, what would change? What would you say would be a good modern day montage? I mean, do we see it? I mean, I was watching Creed the other day. I think it was the second one, and there's
which music video?
Creed, Creed the boxer.
I know, I'm just fucking with you.
Michael B. Jordan, and he does like a training montage video, but it's not a traditional montage. It's something totally different. It's more slick. The music is different. I think you see it in several movies. I can't remember. I think The Hangover 2 might have a montage too. There's several movies that have montages, but they're not like the 80s montages, which were just typically corny. I think the difference is that 80s montages show you like what the character is transforming to, where now the story is being unraveled through dialogue and through action. What do you guys see as far as any sort of montages going on now?
I mean, I'd hope nowadays you see a lot of rehashing of similar ideas and similar storylines, and if not, they're just complete remakes of movies that we had in the 70s and 80s. They're remaking everything nowadays because of this whole nostalgia thing that we got going on right now. I'd hope that they'd bring the montage back, but the original montage, like we said, that shows scenes that kind of move the characters forward, move the storyline forward, has them like coming of age or has them transitioning from whatever it is they're transitioning from. So I'd hope that we'd see more of that in movies these days. I know any kind of training or any kind of sports movie, they can throw in a montage easily, and they can fit the mold, especially of any kind of fighting one or any kind of anything, man. I mean, I think that sports movies or fighting movies can fit that mold extremely easily, and I'd hope that they'd bring that back up because I think they're a lot of fun, and I think that's one of the more memorable scenes from the 80s that we see were the montages.
I think that they can be done today, like Bob mentioned, with training, and how you said too, Randy. I remember specifically the training montage in Creed 2 is very similar to what Rocky does in Rocky 4. Adonis Creed, goes into the desert with Rocky and trains. So it was very reminiscent of him, going into the, out in the woods and doing what he did. Like Bob said, any type of sports movie you can always do something like that. Even if it's like football, basketball, you can do 4, 5, 6 games at a time shown on a montage or some music. I don't know. Maybe we're just not doing, like Bob said, I would love to see them do them. I think now we look back at these montages from the 80s and we think like, oh, they're kind of cheesy. We can see the cheesiness of them, but we laugh at them still and we appreciate them. They're a great way to, not just in sports movies or anything like that, or some kind of situation like that, to progress a story over months, time, days, months, hopefully maybe not years, but so much with clips and a good song. I can't think or remember a movie that I saw like that wasn't a sports movie. So I think they can still do them. Just going to be a matter of like what the subject matter is.
I have a quick question for you, totally off the subject. Do you think Tony Montana provided the cocaine for Emilio Estevez and the scene?
Possibly.
It wasn't weed that made him shatter the glass. I'm just saying.
I think, as far as they're just so over the top. I mean, I think in the 80s it was normal. And then you saw this with like, Ghostbusters, The Last Dragon, you name any 80s movie. You could dance, you could have something silly playing. And even if it's a serious movie, if they have that comedic break with that over the top song, and even sometimes like in Rocky 4 where the song is meant to be serious, it becomes a joke after a while because it's so dated, it's so ridiculous. And I think that's the charm of the 80s movies is that, and you hear, I mean, You're the Best Around is as popular now as it was back in 1984. People just love that nostalgia. They love that over the top, sort of like 80s. Everything had to have been, bang or bust because that's what the era was. It was just go big or go home. And we don't see that. I think everybody's really safe now. They want to make sure that their scenes are more manicured. They want to make sure that the scenes are more stylistic and that they're slick. They don't want to be vulnerable and show some zaniness, and they don't want to show, like, they don't want people to watch John Wick and say, well, the movie's great, but there was a scene where he was practicing his rifle shooting and people are making fun of it now. So everybody's so cautious with what they put out now. Everybody's afraid to dare. And I think at the 80s, even though at the time it might not have seen, it may not have been seen as silly and just, facetious or whatever. It's aged to a point where I think we all still enjoy it. And we talk about those montages more than we talk about the movies.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. Yeah. Show me Dimmock.
I want to give a shout out to a couple of our episodes. We've been really happy with, we talked about how it took a while for this podcast to sort of get off its feet. Episode 4, Best Heartbreak Song. I noticed that the downloads for that episode have really increased over the past 2 months. So I re-listened to it and it was a really good episode.
Was it funny?
It was funny. It was funny.
I think I remember that being funny. I think anybody asked me, I think at the beginning of this, or like, what's a good episode? Listen to the Best Heartbreak Song because it was funny. The jokes we had about Phil Collins and about Sinead O'Connor, everything that we did, I think that was a funny episode. That was definitely a turning point.
That was a turning point, and that was so early on. We keep on thinking, maybe we picked it up episode 20, whatever. But episode 4, if you haven't checked it out, Best Heartbreak Song. Also, episode 15, Best Cover Song. That one's been getting a lot of downloads too. So thank everybody for checking those out. And that's our show, everyone. Listeners, we'd like to hear from you. Hit us up and let us know what are your favorite 80s montages. Most importantly, let us know what you think about the show. You may reach us at Formidable Opponents and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook by searching for Formidable Opponents. And send us a message on memo.fm/Formidable Opponents. We'd love to hear from you. We will feature your message on a future episode. Rate and review us on Spotify, Apple, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. We really appreciate that. And lastly, we want to shout out Creative Little Pill for her wonderful artwork. And join us next episode as we debate Best TV Mom. So for Bob and Joseph, this is Randall. We'll see you all next week.
Throw the damn towel!